So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to lesson 3 of the second day of week 4 of PR2. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to try and wrap up in terms of week 4. We're going to do a quick recap in terms of the things that we covered, and we'll take it from there and we'll go through to editorial angles, understanding them. So just in terms of a recap, we went into in depth yesterday in terms of research and what research is and why do we fundamentally use it. So research, measurement and evaluation, those were some of the key things that was covered. And in order for any plan to be successful, campaign, strategy, it needs research, particularly research that is credible. And and just to highlight the one point on Wikipedia is that if you need to use the resource from there, what you need to do is you need to check the source that it's extracted from, whether it's credible or not, before actually using it. The other thing that I need to mention and recap on is the in-text referencing and references. Remember, in your document, you're going to have in-text references and you're going to have your Harvard referencing, the full references at the bottom of your document. Formative assessments 1, I don't need to remind you. I think I reminded you quite a bit yesterday that you need to be getting on with that. Remember, when you are submitting your work on PR2, the level of work that you are going to be producing needs to be, you need to check for spelling, check for grammar, also how you present your document. In the working world, if you have to present a report or a presentation, you need to ensure that it looks professional and that it's something that you're actually going to take pride in. A lot of the students, especially last minute submissions, it's just sent through and it's very badly done. Remember, the marking is done quite strictly. So yes, PR3, PR1, for a lot of you that you mentioned, you enjoyed it. It was not that difficult. Remember, we are stepping up the pace on this, but that should not deviate you from wanting to pursue PR. So public relations is a really good discipline to actually go into. So it shouldn't deter you. So it's just that it needs to be properly presented, because we are seeing work that there are spelling errors, there's grammar, there's a lot of issues with the document. So client or organizational research, we covered the opportunity, problem research, stakeholder or audience research, we checked. Types of research, so quantitative and qualitative, we covered yesterday and I gave you examples of it. So please make sure that you read through it, you do additional research. So we do the module specifically on research to emphasize that everything that you need to do, you need to underpin it with research. So go and research. If you need to look at more examples, please do so in terms of quantitative and qualitative research. The monitoring and evaluation in terms of planning, why that is so important. And then examples of companies that didn't do proper research, that failed dismally. So we use the Kodak example, there was Dove, there was the Peter one that we used, and Mr. Clean, and the Dove one again. So yes, there's a lot of examples out there. I would encourage you to go out and have a look at them. So in terms of the methods, researchers, sorry, apologies guys, I'm trying to read off two things here. So in terms of the research methods, right? On page 80 and 81, which I think I did mention needed to be corrected. it is in fact correct. So it goes from 80, 81 through to 82. There are different kinds of research. And remember, we spoke about when you're putting together a survey, the kinds of questions that you will have to ask is Linkit, somatic, multiple choice, dichotomous, and so forth. Okay, so just make sure you know the different kinds of questions that need to be put in research. Remember the importance of open-ended questions. So open-ended questions actually is able to extract perceptions, attitudes, behavior of the individual that's completing the survey or questionnaire. The research process. So just to recap, remember there's a formal process of what we do in terms of the research process. And sorry, I'm just going to grab my notes from here. There is a formal process, right, that needs to be applied when doing this. So the very first thing that one would need to do, and this would actually tie in to your textbook. I just want to align it so that you can, and this is on chapter 8 of the textbook. It's on page 76 and it's the research process. So when you are doing the research process, what we do is we look at the research brief to make sure that the problem or the challenge is correctly identified. I think I mentioned this in yesterday's video. So one of the things is we all listen and we all process information differently. We all have different understanding of different things. When you're meeting with the client or the organization, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to get the problem statement from them, or you're going to find out what the opportunity is that they've identified and that they would like a plan to be put together or a strategy. Now, very important, as I reiterate today, is once you have collected that information, you have made your notes, then you would reiterate to the client or the organization, whoever you are dealing with, your contact person, is to reiterate, to say, if I'm understanding it correctly, this is what is required from the brief. Very important. You can do a follow-up email to the client to say that as per today's meeting, this is what the research brief is going to entail. And then you put it in writing and you send it through. Make sure you've got that very first step in order. The checks and balances, the boxes are ticked, and you've got a clear vision or a picture in your mind of what needs to be done. So once you have sent that email, the client will look at it, and then if there is by some small chance, when you went through the understanding of the research brief and it's not entirely correct, they will then correct it over email and say, actually, yesterday I forgot to mention X, Y, and Z. Objectives, we covered that. It's very important. And we see this time and time again with regards to objectives. Objectives need to be written in a SMART format. What do we mean when we say a SMART format? They need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be attainable, they need to be realistic, and they need to have a time frame to it. So there's a lot of objectives that are being written that does not encompass the elements of the SMART principle. You will not be marked, or you will not get good marks in your assessment if your objectives are not written smartly. If you don't have a timeline, if it's not realistic, if you can't measure, there's no point in doing the objective if it's not going to be done properly. So the reason I'm emphasizing this is that we are seeing a lot of this where students are struggling with writing objectives, even though it is taught extensively. So I'll give you an example, right? So goals and objectives. I want you to think about this. Are they the same? Goals and objectives. They are the same to a certain extent, however, they are not. Okay, let me unpack that for you. So, a goal is something that is broad, and it is when you have your objectives actually support the goal. Your objectives are the how to achieve the goal. So to give an example is I would like to run the Comrades Marathon in 2024 and to complete it in 4 hours, right? That is a broad goal. Goals are broad, they're not written in a smart format. Then when you go to an objective, so remember, you will have one goal and you will have several objectives, or you will have two objectives or three objectives to support that goal. The objectives, once again, tells you how is it that you are going to achieve that goal. It's the how part of it. An objective number one could be, I am going to train, or I am going to run at least 5 kilometers every day from Monday to Friday, from today up until 31 Jan 2024. Is it specific? Yes, it's specific. I want to run 5Ks, a minimum of 5Ks. Is it measurable? Yes. I look at my smartwatch that tells me how many kilometers I've run. It is measurable. Also, in terms of if you've got a planner, you tick every day on there that I've run for 5 kilometers at least for 5 days a week. You tick that. It's measurable, right? Is it attainable or achievable? Yes, because you're a marathon runner. It's something that you've been able to do. You are in the training process. So it's attainable. Okay, is it realistic? Yes, it's realistic because you have enough time to train for the marathon, and 5 days a week you are able to train. So you give yourself Saturday and Sunday off, and then it has a timeline to it. So you said you're starting today and you're going to finish on the 31st of Jan 2024. That is an example of an objective, and it is used, it's a how am I going to achieve running and completing the Comrades Marathon in the 4-6 hours that I mentioned. Okay, target market is your stakeholder and stakeholder mapping. So very important to do this is the nature and composition of the target market must be defined so that the researcher can define the universe or population to take part. When you're doing your stakeholder mapping, be very clear in terms of how you do this. Going back to research, go onto Google, look at your textbook, look at resources on the webs that you can find in terms of stakeholder mapping. This is a stakeholder mapping process. So if you say employees, okay, you must be able to define your employees. So when you say media, media is very broad. We have print, online, and broadcast media, which I think I've mentioned in class before. Your print would be your newspapers, it would be your magazines. Your online is it can also be newspapers like News 24 that you can get online, or any other news information channel that you can get out there. And then you have your broadcast, which is your radio and TV. So think very carefully in terms of your target market. If you're segmenting them, you cannot just put media, because that tells me that it's print, online, and broadcast, and I don't know which ones are going to be which. So remember, I need to emphasize this because you need to get it right for your formative assessment. When you're doing your project, it's like telling a story, and I'm sure many of you are going to get tired of hearing this over and over and over, but I need to emphasize it. It cannot be disjointed. Your objectives, when you are measuring them, your objectives has to be tied to every single item on your action plan. So an item on your action plan can be linked to two objectives. So very important to remember that what is linked and how it's linked. The timing, the date when it is required, the deadlines that must be met. So this is a proposal that you're putting together in terms of the research brief. And your proposal is going to consist of objectives of the research. What are the action standards? So the decisions that the researcher will be using. Sorry, I actually missed that point out. These are the decisions that the research user will make based on the outcome of the results. If 70% respond positively to the new packaging, it will be used. So what kinds of research methodology are you going to use? What are the measurements? What is your sample size? So if you want to do research in Gauteng, you are not going to research the entire population of Gauteng because it's not realistic. You're going to use a sample size of the population. So you're going to use a certain percentage of the population to conduct the survey. You don't interview, or you don't send a questionnaire to every single person that is based in Gauteng or any other province for that matter. The timing is when it's required and deadlines that must be met. The budget. So the reason why you do the budget is to give an indication of what the cost factors are going to be. What is very key is to ensure that you have your contingency amount. Some people, the way they do this is they add up the total amount of the cost, and it's normally 10 or 20% of that total cost that they add as a contingency. Why do we add a contingency, and why is it so critical? Is because when you are implementing your plan and somewhere along the way it does not go according to what the plan is supposed to be, then you would have the money to be able to actually go in and then implement an additional activity and things like that. So it is very important that this research process, when it's followed, it's done in a systematic way, meaning that it flows, and that when you are presenting it, that it's clear and you've got your objectives aligned, and what research methodology are you going to do? Are you going to do questionnaires? Are you going to do one-on-one interviews? Are you going to conduct focus groups? Are you going to conduct sampling for a product, if it's for a product, or for a packaging? You're going to send the survey to 10,000 people, right? And you want them to give you an indication whether they are in favor of the new packaging or not. So it is important for when you are doing the research process that you follow these steps. Remember, when you're pitching this idea to the client, remember to always check in with the client in terms of timelines. When does this need to be presented by? So that you can then work backwards and ensure that your proposal is ready and it's done professionally, it's free of spelling mistakes, error, etc. Because here's the thing, your formative assessment is one thing that you are submitting. You need to take it seriously and think as if this is a real life document that you're sharing with the client. So now in a boardroom, when you're presenting to the management team or the client, and because with a lot of these projects, you need management buy-in or leadership buy-in, where they support the process that's going to be undertaken, the research process. So you would have to present this on a screen and talk the audience through in terms of your methodology for the research process. Please bear in mind that while you're presenting, and if they find that there's mistakes on your presentation, there's errors, it is done not professionally, they're going to think twice about letting you go ahead with this process, because you're going to plant a seed of doubt in their mind. So with the research proposal, the background, okay, so I just want to just check here in terms of the alignment of the pages. We've spoken about the research process. So the background is where you actually do research on what is required. So if it's a launch of a new product, you would need to go and ascertain what is the product all about, what is the packaging that they're going to change, what is the problem that they have within the organization. We used an example yesterday, for example, the culture of the organization, that the leadership have sensed that there may be a problem with the culture, and there is trust issues within the organization, so they need to do something about it. When leadership or the management team or your boss comes to you and says, we have a problem, we need to assess how is it that we are going to fix this problem. That is when you know it is a very progressive organization. They've identified that there are challenges or problems within the organization, and they're prepared to actually put in the work to be able to solve the challenge. Problem definition or information required. What is the reputation of our company? So what we need to do, we need to establish there is, if it's an external research in terms of the company, where we need to do a perception audit, meaning that we want to establish what is the organization's perception in the public domain, or what is the reputation of the company within. So remember, the employees are very much a primary stakeholder. They will always be positioned as a primary stakeholder because they have a vested interest in the organization that they're working. So they are employed at the organization. Research objectives, we've covered that, and then the research design. So the research design is using a sampling frame, people that stage in townhouses, so it's actually stay, it's not stage. People that stay in townhouses in Joburg, and sampling techniques, you will generate to the entire population sample size. So what you need to do is you need to benchmark according to industry standards. So when you're conducting a questionnaire, what is an acceptable sample size? You need to establish industry standards. If you take, for example, the population of Honeydew, which is where I stay, the population there is probably 20,000 people. Now, in terms of a questionnaire, you need to establish, in terms of industry standards, what would be an acceptable sample size. I'm not going to get through all of those people. So acceptable standard, industry standard for a sample size would be probably 30%. So if you manage to get interviews from 30% of the sample size, that would be acceptable to use for your research. Then we move on to page 79 to 83. Just want to double check the pages. Okay, so on page 79, there's cost and timing, special needs, resources of the firm, research study, and research report. So what you will see is, for cost and timing, is you would need to have an Excel spreadsheet, or you would have to have a table into your presentation that you can allocate the cost and the timing. So what is this activity going to cost? And more or less, how long is this research going to take? So if you're going to put together a questionnaire, with regards to questionnaires and surveys, as I mentioned yesterday, is that you would have someone assisting you, like an agency or someone external that is able to help you put together this questionnaire or survey. However, your role is integral in terms of assessing the kind of questions that go in. They will help you and give you ideas of some of the questions and to be able to formulate it. Remember, these companies that do this permanently, they are very well versed in terms of what they want the outcomes to be. So when I say what they want the outcomes, so if you're doing an employee engagement or an organizational climate survey to assess what are the issues within the organization, why are employees not happy, some of the things that you would look at is your focus groups where you have between 10 to 15 people in a room, and they would be asked questions, and then you would do one-on-one interviews, you would do a survey, you would do questionnaires, you would do suggestion boxes, you would do a whole list of research tools that are going to get the wider reach of people. If you look, for example, in a manufacturing environment where the manufacturing plant is operational 24/7, that means it is non-stop, it runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How do you access those individuals who are working shifts? So you have the day shift, and then you have a team coming on in the evening, and then the day shift are relieved of their duties. So how would you access those individuals that are coming in to the plant at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening to be able to do this? Very important when you are doing this kind of research is to always work with the management or the client to assess and establish whether the manufacturing plant can have a 30-minute downtime in order for this research to be done, or what they would do generally in cases where I've done exercises like this within organizations is that 50% of the workforce that's on the floor would be on, they would be working, and the 50% the survey or the focus group would be conducted on. Then they would swap over, is where the 50% that went to the focus group, for example, would then swap over with the team that's on the floor, the manufacturing environment, and then they would swap over. In order for the plant to be continuously operational, this is what is done. So before you go ahead and implement activities and your research methodology, ensure that it's aligned to the needs and requirements of the organization. So you cannot stop the manufacturing facility for an hour due to the financial repercussions that it would have. But at the same time, you need to then address the employees and to find a way of doing it. The resources of the firm. So resources is twofold. So who is actually going to assist you in implementing this or adopting this research process, undertaking it? It's a huge task. Whether it's internal or external, it is a really huge task. So some of the resources is you might use an advertising firm or a public relations consultancy to assist you and support you in achieving the objectives. So when you look at the objectives, the resources of the firm must be able to assist you to be able to achieve those objectives that you've put in your proposal that was approved, and you're going ahead with it. In terms of the research study, right? Now, this is where the analysis happens. Remember, we've touched on qualitative and quantitative data. You're going to have to establish what is going to be needed for that. So in many cases where statistics is needed, you're going to have to lean towards the quantitative data, and where you want people's perceptions, their attitudes, their behaviors, you're going to lean towards the qualitative, where you're going to do surveys, questionnaires, one-on-one interviews, and so forth. The research report. Once you have concluded your research, you're going to have to put together a report. Now, the report, you need to ensure that it's structured and do some research in terms of when you are doing a research report, the structure. It is a very structured document, a very structured presentation. So generally what you would do is you would have a printed copy and you would also present, because this report is going to give an outline, a definition of the challenge, the problem, outlining that, right? What is the thinking in terms of, or what approach did you apply when you went through and you did this kind of research, the research process, the costs, the timings, and based on the findings of the research, your report will then indicate these were the things that were identified through the report. And then what you would also need to do to take it a step further is that you would then indicate what are some of the interventions that need to be placed. So the methodology and data collection section provides an explanation of the method or steps that were followed to complete the research design. The results section is structured according to the goals and objectives, right? So based on what they call findings of the research, what you would have to do is then allocate suitable interventions. So for example, if one of the things that were identified through your research is the fact that employees felt that they weren't getting enough information about the organization, they were hearing it in possibly the media, they were hearing it from colleagues, who heard it from a colleague, who heard it from a colleague, and that kind of thing. So then one of the interventions would be is more engagement with employees in terms of communication. So then you would break it down further. The internal communication platforms, such as plasma screens, will need to be implemented so that in a factory environment, if you think about this, we use email to communicate to employees. We use the intranet, which is the internal website, which employees can access company information. You can also put on the homepage the latest information, a new product, new packaging on the homepage. Then you also have the company magazine or the newsletter, which it's an internal document. You get town hall meetings. So you have got to think about those employees who are in a factory environment, who do not have the luxury of sitting behind a computer. They are on their feet on the production line. You can put up plasma screens in the plant where information is published. You can make use of their canteen. You can make use of posters, and you can make use of notice boards. So when you are doing your research report and based on your findings, you are then going to break it down in terms of saying, we need to implement X, Y, and Z. Then you also need to make sure before you present your report, you look at the client's brief in terms of what is it that they wanted and are you delivering on that? If not, then you have an issue because it's not in sync in terms of the client, what they wanted. And the last thing you want if you are in a consulting business is to have an unhappy client or client that just thinks that they've wasted their time, money, effort on getting this done, or asking you or giving you the task to do this. What I'm going to ask you to do as part of homework is on page 70. It's actually on page 78. I want to double check that. It's actually on page 78 through to 79. It's a case study on the impact of environmental change on public relations and marketing. So Angela Barter is, she's a fundi, if I can call her, in the environmental management space. She's actually a colleague of mine. I know her very well. And read on what she says she has published here. It is very interesting and it gives a very different perspective in terms of when you look at environmental change, when you're looking at public relations and marketing in that context. So make sure you read that case study. It is very interesting. And I think this has come to the end. We are at the end of this one. I am going to stop sharing and I want to now share another screen. Just waiting for this to upload. Okay, we are on. Okay, so what we've done is we've gone in detail on research. We've really broken it down in terms of the process, understanding what research is, the kinds of research. So also remember on your roadmap for this week, please go and look in your spare time and think of a top SA company and do the research on it. So what we're going to cover next is the understanding editorial angles, ideas, and then we move on to the practice of PR. So what are we understanding by editorial angles and ideas? That is interesting, hey? So editorial angles and ideas is something that you're going to have to pitch. You're going to have to know how to pitch it, and you're going to have to ensure that it is so impactful so that the journalist or the editor would be keen on actually publishing work that has very strategic editorial angles and ideas to it. So in this part, we're going to cover is how to put newsworthy ideas together in a way that will get you media coverage. So when you look at a newsroom, and for those of you who don't know, in a newsroom, they have an email, they have journalists, they have editors. There is a buzz in a newsroom. The reason why there is a buzz is because each media house, especially in the space that covers news articles, whether it's locally or globally. And I want to ask this question. What is happening in the world today? Globally, locally, yes, you're going to get so tired of me asking this and you're going to think, oh my word, can she stop not asking us this? So remember, when I do see you again, whether it's face to face or on Teams, I am going to ask the very same question. What is happening in the world today? How do journalists and editors decide what goes in the newspaper? It is not because they only have 10 articles to publish. They probably have 50. They have a choice to make in terms of assessing what is newsworthy enough to be published and what would our readers want to read about. They're not going to publish something that's not going to be newsworthy or is not going to be something that a reader absolutely wants to see or read about. What does editorial coverage mean? It is content that is published by third party. So you would find an editorial angle, you would write a media release, and you would send it to News 24, and they would then look at the content and publish it. In the cases of public relation, the media, which is radio, TV, magazines, newspapers, website, that is what is applicable in the case editorial coverage in relation to public relations is the media, radio, TV, magazines, newspapers, and websites. So if you approach a radio station and there's a segment on health and fitness or on any topic, and that specific show covers it, and you approach them and say, this minister wants to talk about, okay, let's use ESCOM. There's a minister that's going to be on radio, and he's going to talk about the way forward for ESCOM and or the new CEO of the organization. So in the context of public relations, we use those platforms to get our editorial coverage. It does not simply promote products or services. So this is not sales. What we're doing is not sales, right? There is a difference. Remember, for editorial and advertorial, I think I need to mention this and just explain the clarity or the how it differentiates. So advertorial is something that gets published in any platform, whether it's a radio, TV, magazines, newspapers, websites, and where you pay for it. That is advertorial. Editorial is something where you pitch a specific editorial angle or an idea, and it is covered by those platforms, and you do not get charged money for it. The magazine, for example, may say, can you please put their logo on our website? That kind of thing. So there is some kind of exchange where we then put the logo of that organization or that magazine on our website to create some publicity, to be affiliated with it. So if we're a massive organization, like your Unilevers of the world, or a radio station, if you look. So when you go to a radio station's website, any of them, you will see there's advertising on it. So companies pay the radio station to actually put on their adverts. Okay. If in a case where 94.7 is running a competition and they're giving away, which they did, I think within the last 2 years, they gave a car away. Okay, so in that instance, because the company that manufactures those vehicles are giving a vehicle away, and 94.7 is running this competition, the branding would not cost the dealership money in terms of being on 94.7's website, because they are actually giving a vehicle away. And what's going to happen is there's going to be more listeners calling in for that competition. So that is how editorial and advertorial works. It provides value so customers get additional information in return. So we want customers and our consumers of information to actually read the articles and want to read more of them. I am going to try and play this video, so bear with me. It is the Zeus and Hera one. How would you get your media coverage, articles, interviews, opinion pieces, features? Consider this as we go along in the class. So I am going to stop sharing and I am going to quickly play this video for you. Okay, we're going to watch this video.
My fellow gods, the dark skies have spoken.
It is time for Susan and I to retire.
But where will you go?
Zeus! Sorry, Zeus! I need a charge on this. Oh! Thanks!
Sweetheart, it's not rocket science. I'm heading out. Don't forget to take Peggy for a walk. Mwah!
Yo, Zeus! Ah, a little juice. That's it. I'm done with this place.
We'll see about that. Everything okay out there, baby?
Hey! Yeah.
Little Peggy, a little walk, huh?
I figure you could use a little pick-me-up.
All electric?
All electric.
The BMW iX. Electricity in its ultimate form.
Electric
Avenue.
Then we take it higher.
BMW, the ultimate electric driving machine.
My fellow gods, the dark sky.
Okay, so if only if it was easy as that, hey, with this Zeus and Hera advert, where we could control robots, hey, when we have load shedding and the robots are down, and to just electrocute them and to get them working. So if you look at the Zeus and Hera advert and how BMW made use of sort of the, what do you call them? I'm trying to get the word now. I can't really actually get the word, but it tied it to a movie, right? Action figures and heroes. They tied it to Zeus and Hera, and they linked it to the BMW. So if you can interrogate that video and think about it in terms of how the editorial angle was actually pitched. I just want to check. There's something not right with my screen. I just want to check what is going on very quickly. Okay, we're back on. So in terms of that BMW advert, you need to look and think, what were the editorial angles that they actually wanted to pitch? And in your mind, you need to interrogate that. I don't know what is going on with my slides today. Okay, there's other articles that you can look at, and I have taken this one from Biz Community. So it's the Orchard and Onions, Volkswagen ticks all the boxes, Eskom not so much. So being a petrol head, this person has been fascinated by how global car market has evolved over the years, over the past 15 years, because it has often been the case of marketing, okay, we're not allowed to say that word in class, baffling consumers. So the marketing, right, has been baffling consumers' brains. So what they're referring to is how clever marketers have managed to convince tens of millions of mums and dads around the world that they cannot do without an SUV. Now, an SUV is a big vehicle where you can put your car seats in. It's for bigger families. Now, marketers have gone and they've tried to convince people that this is what they need in their lives, that they can feel like Tarzan and Jane. If you go and watch the advert, you will see, and tackle the unrelenting urban jungle. And they are explorers with a sense of adventure, that they are rugged individualists who choose to go on their own way, not noticing the millions other lemmings doing exactly the same thing. So what it does, those vehicle adverts with the SUVs, it makes you feel like you are adventurous when you're watching it. If you get this vehicle, you will be adventurous, all of that. Yet in most cases, the SUV does not offer a significant advantage over that much maligned and old-fashioned family transport, the sedan. So they're making a comparison with SUV and sedans. SUVs are higher, but unless you want to climb pavements regularly, meaning that you can go bundu bashing, climb the curb when there's no parking, that is what they mean. You don't really have a use of it, right? So a sedan or a hatchback is it is a car of choice that many people can still use it as family vehicles. So what you can do is in your own time is watch the Volkswagen advert, and it's up there. You'll see orchards and onions. Volkswagen ticks all the boxes. Eskom not so much. It's a very tongue-in-cheek advert. Please do go and watch it when you have the time. Next, moving on. Introduction. So in PR, we need to get coverage for our campaigns, our clients, or our events in the media. You cannot just phone a journalist up and tell them the organization you work for and expect them to want to give you coverage. In many instances, many instances, this is in the real world. You have people who pick up the phone, they phone the journalist, and they tell them, I want the story published. Does not work like that. Or you will find, this is the lazy way of doing it, where you find the journalist's or the editor's email address, and you just send them an email and you expect them to publish. Please don't do this. It's not going to work. That is why we have media relations. Media relations is building solid and strong, sustainable relationships with journalists, editors, so that when you have a story to pitch to them, you will mail them, you will give them a call. So by the time you've mailed them, it's given them some time to read it. Don't leave it for last minute, because you cannot expect to send an email now, phone them now, and say you want this published. Give them enough lead time, because they work in a newsroom. And in the newsroom, it's all about speed. So what you would generally do is send them an email while you are building this relationship with journalists, and you try and engage with them, especially when you don't need them to publish a story. You meet them for a cup of coffee and you are able to engage and get to know them better. So you would send them the email, and what you would do is you would explain to them in a very few lines what your pitch is all about, and if they would be interested in publishing, they would then tell you, yes, no, what about this? Can we interview someone in the company? So very important to do relationship building in order to build that relationship. Hundreds of PR professionals are pitching ideas to them for their events or organizations, so you need to be the one that stands out. The best way to think about how you can stand out is by considering what is newsworthy, what is interesting, or if you would want to read or watch something like this. How do you know if something will be newsworthy? You have to watch the news. Once again, we're talking about research, and see what people are talking about, or what people want to know. So if you look at the newspaper, what do you find in there? What is published? What is newsworthy? What sits on the front page? So very important is to build a relationship with a journalist. And what this in essence means is that it even means going to the media house that they sit in, and having a cup of coffee with them. So you do things at their convenience because they work on a very tight deadline in terms of publishing stories. So just bear that in mind, that time is of essence, but meeting them at their place of work, having a cup of coffee or off-site and engaging with them, telling them who you are, telling them the organization that you work for, and what is it that you do. Remember, please be authentic. Don't try to position yourself or the organization as something else. Always be authentic in who you are, what you say, and be genuine. Remember, journalists have a very inquiring and inquisitive mind. They can spot a mile away if you are being fake to them, or is it if you just want something from them. So please be genuine about it when you are going about doing the media relations. I really don't know why my slide is doing, okay, there we go. Editorial angles require out-of-the-box thinking. Consider if your client required you to get media coverage 5 times a month. You are a PR consultant and you need to at least get 5 articles in 1 month. You cannot use the same idea for 5 different and competing outlets. That is not what the requirement is. You have to have 5 different ideas. Yes, you can take the one idea and send it to 10 different media outlets if you want, but you need 5 different ideas to get into 5 different media outlets. What you need to do is you need to establish which media does this need to go to, this messaging. You cannot send it to every single media house. And this is what a lot of public relation practitioners and where they go wrong in terms of information. They take their media list and they basically send, they in the blind copy section, put all the emails of the editors or the journalists, and they say, dear journalist/editor, please find attached my press release. Is that going to get attention? No, because it's not a one size fits all, right? You need to do a lot of research. Yes, you're going to get tired of this word, but get used to it. Research is the only thing that is going to make you genuine. It's going to make you authentic. It's going to make you good at your job. So just bear in mind, research, research, research. If you are going to be sending out information, remember, it is key to find out about the media. So if you want to look at this community, what is their audience, their readership? Who reads Biz Community? Who accesses it? What are the most popular pages? What are some of the stories that are featured on the front page? That is the detail or the extent that you've got to get to. Lesson 101 for me is to find out why this is doing this, but in any event, there we go. The more you know and the more you research, the more ideas you will have. This means you're going to need to know about everyone and everything to do with the organization. You're going to have to use their website, the media, the people, and any sources to find out information. So one of the key traits of a public relations practitioner is to ensure that you are resourceful. Resourceful is meaning if you go to a website and you cannot find any information that you need, you're going to go to social media. You're going to look at LinkedIn. You're going to look at Twitter. You're going to look at what is written on the net about that specific resource. When we look at products, what does the organization make? Interesting things about how it's made, what it's made of, where it's made, who designed or who made it, how can it be used, recent developments in the field, new additions, new packaging, what is the history of the product? Who are the people that make it or invented it or designed it? What does the product have? What makes it better than its competition? Exactly like the image that's showing there. When you go into store, there is, if you look at milk, there are so many different brands of milk now. Generally, people would go and pick up Clover. Why? Because they only use Clover, they don't use any other brand. If you look at margarine, if you look at butter, if you look at cereals, there are so many options on the shelf that sometimes it may get confusing. Sometimes if it's interesting enough and positioned in a right way, remember that a consumer will also maybe try it. That is where you get people in store handing out samples of a product so people can try it. So in terms of positioning, what companies do, and this is leaning onto marketing. So when you look at a shelf, there's 4 shelves in this image, right? Now, it is easier for a customer to probably reach the 2nd and the 3rd shelf to pick up a product. So what companies do is they actually buy spaces. So products are just not put on the shelf because in any specific order or according to the supermarket's preference. So companies actually purchase. So to put a product on a shelf costs you money, whether it's in the aisle or in the fridge. So generally, what is easier to reach is the 2nd and 3rd shelf. That is what people then would choose, not the 1st and the last shelf. So always remember that in terms of when you're going to store, where is your favorite product? On which shelf is it positioned? What is the history of the organization? So understanding where did it come from, who started it, where is it going, the changes in the industry, how will the 4th industrial revolution change the organization, old versus new, advertising campaigns, brand ambassadors, logo, what is the organization's brand story? Now, there's something very interesting that I do for myself, right? I learn about companies that started in a garage, like if you look at your Steve Jobs, you look at Virgin, the big brand Virgin, Richard Branson, he started by selling records door to door, right? So where did a company originate from and where is their history? So where are their roots? Like in that picture next to the text, you will see an image of a tree with the roots. And I think I have mentioned it maybe in this class, if not maybe in another class. Ocean Basket was started by 3 friends in Pretoria. The first Nando's store that was ever opened was a place near, it's Norwood, near Norwood, the very first Nando's store. If you look at the Nando's brand today, if you look at Ocean Basket today, even Mug and Bean was started by husband and wife. If you look at these brands and where they are today, even Pizza Hut or whichever fast food chain store, if you look at, right? How have they used technology? So if you look at something like Uber Eats, right? I don't know why we're talking about food, but anyway. Yeah, so if you look at Uber Eats, you can get food delivered to your door just by the click of a button. You can call in and order a pizza from your local pizza shop, and you get it delivered to your door. That is how the 4th industrial revolution has changed us. There's an app where you can order your groceries online. If you look at Checkers 6060, this actually the fourth industrial revolution sped up at an exponential rate when COVID-19 hit, because organizations had to change. So which means groceries were being delivered to people's doors, so they didn't have to go in store. There's a lot of them. So bear that in mind. The people who work at the organization. So staff profiles, meet the team, thought leadership articles. So these are some of the things that as public relations practitioners, you're going to have to be responsible for, right? Things you need to study to have this job is exactly what you're doing, public relations. Please do me a favor and give public relations an opportunity. See the year through and go into and finish PR3. See it through, guys. It is a valuable skill. Even in PR3, we teach you so much that is not only applicable to any other career that you might move into. It is applicable in everyday life in your working environment. How to write, how to actually put together an article, how to put together a report. Those are things you're going to need if you change your career from public relations. So hopefully we're going to see you, or I would say not hopefully, I'm going to see you in public relations 3. I know we're only at the start of the year, but pretty soon it'll be the end of March, which is the end of the first quarter, right? So staff profiles, meet the team. You may have to write a piece on the CEO in the company magazine. Staff policies, safety and staff development programs in your organization. So your human capital team will have wellness programs that they will drive around hypertension, diabetes. These are diseases, non-communicable diseases that are plaguing not only South Africa, but the world. If you go and do your research and look at the stats, by 2040, it's estimated that probably 16.3 million people will die of cancer. And I don't know, it's quite a shocking number, will die of diabetes and hypertension. You can actually die from high blood pressure. So creating education campaigns with your human capital colleagues is going to be very important. When we speak about the triple bottom line, it's people, profit, planet. So companies exist not only for they are supposed to exist not only for profit, they are supposed to take into consideration people, communities, how can we give back to the communities? And a very big thing in today's world is the planet. So how are companies working towards reducing carbon footprint, reducing waste in the environment, reducing, if they've got a manufacturing facility, reducing the carbon emissions? If you look at solar, with what's happening with Eskom, and the government is now incentivizing people who are installing solar solutions in their home, a tax rebate on that. So solar is huge. Whoever didn't see this coming, a lot of people may have not seen it coming. The companies who have already entered the market in solar and have established a footprint they've got a competitive advantage. So hopefully your organization has diverse and interesting group of professionals that you can use to tell newsworthy stories and get good coverage. So also very important to remember, we don't only want to profile your senior staff members, your leadership. We want human interest stories. So Joe is on the production line and he is studying his qualification, Bachelor of Commerce, which he has just finished and he's graduated. You're going to publish that. You're even going to put it on the front page of your employee magazine. Why? Because a company is not only made up of a leadership team. In fact, a leadership team is the minority when you look at an organization. Unless it's an organization of 3 people, right? Where there are very few employees, and like there's 2 directors and 1 employee who does the admin, who does the bookkeeping, all of that, then that's a different story. But that doesn't take away the importance from employees. And if their child has graduated and they have a PhD, you would publish that story. It is human interest stories, and it's something that we want to actually read about. So what is very interesting is when I've done this before, this exercise before, we've covered human interest stories. The published magazine, people take home to show their families, their friends, when they are profiled in it, or when they are profiled due to like their child attaining a PhD. Me and my technology challenges, I will get there. There we go. Training and the 4th Industrial Revolution. So please go and research. If you are not familiar with when we speak about the 4th Industrial Revolution, and this is homework for you to do. And I am making a note of it, and it's something all of you need to do. You have my email address. I want an email. You need to research the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th Industrial Revolution. When did the 1st Industrial Revolution start? And what was it about? The 2nd Industrial Revolution, what it was about. The 3rd Industrial Revolution, all of the revolutions up till the 5th Industrial Revolution. Each one, when did it begin, right? What does it entail, and how did it affect business and the world? Now, that is homework for you to do. Today is Wednesday. Before class, so I want this by Monday, next week, Monday. I want you to email it. Every single student needs to do this. Please mail it by Monday to me. You can do a Word document and you can send it through to me. I'm not asking you to do a presentation. If you want to do it in PowerPoint and you want to do a presentation, all the better. Please do that. Actually, on second thoughts, do this for me. Each one of you are going to put together a presentation in a presentation format like this, and you are going to do the 1st to the 5th Industrial Revolution, and you are going to present it in class. So please bear in mind, that is what you need to do for homework. Anybody that skips it will have to do it and present it in class. Training and awards. So this speaks to recognition of employees in terms of long service awards. You may have heard people in your family who are in the working environment receiving a 10-year, a long service award, or if they've gotten a bursary, or whatever the case may be. Okay, I'm not going to delve into that. Then we move on to the environment. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to research this on the environment. So in South Africa, we talk about recycling. There's a recycling image there in the bins. We talk about reducing carbon emissions. The reason why they are coming out with electric cars, and there are certain vehicles that are not electric that have reduced carbon emissions when you are actually using it. When you look at a lot of the packaging, the next time you pick up a product from a shelf or in your home, please have a look and see whether the packaging is recyclable or not. By now, you should be well aware that in a lot of places they have different colored bins. One is for plastic, one is for paper, one is for bottles. It makes the recycling process so much easier. So please bear in mind, the next time you pick up a product, look at whether the packaging is recyclable or not. Just trying to get to the next slide. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that. So we're not going to go through all of the slides. So what you also need to do is you need to look at aspects of, and I'm going to give you the headings and you can read up on the slides. So employment equity, triple B double E, enterprise development. So when we speak triple B double E, you need to go and research in terms of what that means. We don't have that in the slides, but you need to understand it as a public relations practitioner, what it means. So that is also homework for you to do, is that we are going to ask you in class, you need to research, and this all can be done by Monday, guys. It doesn't need to be done today. So I'll reiterate the homework before we leave, right? Corporate social responsibility. You're also going to research that. Now, all of this you're going to be doing in PowerPoint slides and presenting. So I'm going to move on. When I ask you what is going on in the world today, whether it's globally, South Africa, it usually has information in the news about the economy, the current affairs, politics. Russia-Ukraine war was overseas, it was global, it affected us, right? We speak about load shedding. So load shedding generally makes headlines every single day, not load shedding per se, but in terms of Eskom, what are they trying to do? Because this load shedding saga is ongoing. We have load shedding every single day. The impact of the exchange rate on your company that you're working in. So it's impacted. When you hear the rand is so much to the US dollar, to the yen, what does that mean? Fuel price increases. So when you see that fuel is going up, what does that mean? Fuel is going up, it's going to cost me more. No, it's going to cost everyone more, because the reason for this is that if you have a company that is transporting goods by truck or, excuse me, by truck, they are traveling from Cape Town to Gauteng. That means the price is going to increase of the product due to the increase in the price of fuel. So this is how, when I ask you what is happening in the world, excuse me, what is happening in the world, what is happening in the news, is because I need you to start thinking on this level. How is load shedding impacting an organization? Many organizations do not have solar power. They have generators. But what happens is if there's a problem with the generator, it breaks down. The organization cannot continue with business as usual. The challenges of the not moving slides. That is my challenge for today. But we'll get there. Right. How do you pitch your idea to the media? So firstly, your media list must be relevant. When we say relevant, right, you cannot use, like you asked me in class the other day, can I use my, it's similar, the exercise to your formative assessment in terms of the media list. Do not use last year's media list for your formative assessment. You'll be marked down. You're going to lose marks, right? That is the very first thing I need to say. Go and do proper research. It must match up with your editorial ideas. in terms of your pitch? Would the media have chosen cover story like that? Would the presenter be able to use this as a segment because he thinks it's interesting and the listeners would enjoy the segment, right? If it's on TV, the same. On a show like Espresso, whether they cover different topics, would it be something interesting to the viewer, right? Would the TV show be able to dedicate 5 to 7 minutes on this specific story? If it's groundbreaking, if it's heart-wrenching, if it's emotional, it invokes emotions, the probability is yes, they will probably have it on that segment on TV. Would the section you have chosen in the newspaper have an article like this? So looking at the newspaper, whether you look at the news online or in print, doesn't matter, right? Have you seen articles of this nature being published before and on that specific platform? So what you must have done is your research. Yes, you're probably tired of that word by now. This means you must have researched, watched, listened, or read your media choice before you pitch to the journalist. Because if you are writing an article, if you are in a company, right, and you want to write about a launch of a new radio station, are you going to approach a journalist who is in the pharmaceutical industry and pitch this story to them? No, you are not, right? You're going to waste the journalist's time. You're going to waste your time. Now, ask yourself this question. Can you write a 450-word media release on this? Does it have newsworthy content? Who are the relevant people to the story? Is it newsworthy? How often, and I do this, when you're reading an article, you read the first paragraph or the first couple of sentences, because sometimes when you look at a heading of a story, it is misleading. It draws you in to read the article, but then 2 or 3 lines in or sentences in, you realize they lied to me. I ask myself, this is me personally, not you. I say, but they lied to me because the heading said this. I was really interested in reading about this, but on the second sentence or third sentence, I gave up and said, I am not going on with this because they lied to me, actually. So sometimes your headings can be misleading. How to word your pitch. Okay, you're going to do an interview with the CEO, marketing manager, CSI manager. So if you want to do a story on CSI, so you are supporting, your company is supporting a specific community, and you want this interview with the project manager or whoever is heading the project, the CSI project that you are supporting, you have to do a prep. You have to do a prep in terms of the questions you're going to ask, the information that a listener or a reader, so a listener would want to hear, or a reader, when they're reading this interview, they would want to hear. So you could even do a live interview or a preferably pre-recorded interview, and you could prompt the person who's being interviewed in terms of the questions, to ask them questions, and then they would answer. And this can be pre-recorded and played on a segment on TV, or in the interview where you're actually interviewing the person, you need to come up with a list of questions. And when you ask them the questions, you write the answers, and then based on those answers, you would formulate a press release or a media release or an article. Okay. And remember the difference between an angle and an angel. So that's just a bit funny. So in terms of the media, the advert that I showed you earlier in terms of BMW. So now that you understand how we negotiate media coverage, let's brainstorm some angles we could pitch to get coverage for BMW for their new electric car. So what you're going to do is you are going to have to do the following, right? This is also homework to do. So you're going to have a lot of presenting to do, guys, and please be prepared. So a PowerPoint presentation, and this specific section, you're going to find out angles. You're going to watch the video again, right? So in there, we're looking at superheroes, and we are talking about electricity, like ESCOM, and then we are talking about the BMW and their new electric car. There are three different or different angles that are covered in there. So that is also homework for you. So what you're going to do is, I'm not going to play this video. In order to become a bit more creative, there are 10 tips here on this YouTube video to be able to inspire you to become more creative when you are looking for creative angles to write stories. Okay, so that is in essence, we've reached the end of that part of the lecture. So sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. So it's understanding editorial actions, not actions, guys. We're not talking about action heroes here. The BMW one was talking. So understanding editorial angles and ideas. Now, in terms of the practice of public relations, there is chapter 9, which you are going to read, or I would have assumed that you would have read it in preparation for this week. I'm just flipping through to chapter 9. We're going to briefly talk about this because it's not a very long chapter. So when you are looking at your career in terms of public relations, there's a number of things you're going to think about. Which area do you want to specialize in? Do you want to specialize in all of them? Now remember, it has a number of sections. There's corporate social investment or responsibility that you can specialize in. There's internal communications, media relations, reputation management. There's investor relations, which also has a financial element to it. There are so many different areas that, or you can go into events management, a whole host of sort of areas under the banner of public relations that you can specialize in. You may want to do one of them. What I did in my career, just to give you an idea, is I wanted to specialize in every single one. So when I got the opportunity, I focused on media relations. When I got the opportunity, I focused on internal communications. And when I didn't know any better, I delved in my previous job and I did both, or all of it. I did internal and external communications, which covered every single area under public relations. So I did that as a challenge to myself to apply the knowledge in the areas that I specialized before I actually got into that job, which was pretty amazing for me. It offered a huge growth and opportunity and development for me. So that was quite amazing. So you may also want to do something like this, which also it expedites your learning journey. So if you look in South Africa, there's a whole host of advertising, public relations agencies. There are like your Edelmans, the Lime Envelope, there's just tons of them out there. So if you access the PRISA's website, the Public Relations Institute of South Africa, and you look at all of the agencies that are listed there, you can go and intern in one of these agencies and learn about the world of public relations. The reason why is These agencies cover all aspects of public relations. You can get exposure, but just be warned, it is a very high-paced, a very fast environment. So you can choose to go into that, intern there, or you can go into a corporate organization where you can actually then also go in as a graduate. And so most programs have a graduate or intern program, and you can go into specifically public relations. You will then be mentored by the person, the line manager or the team. You will be mentored, you'll get to engage with the team, and your learning and development will also take place there. You can also enter into a parastatal or a government organization. You can also enter on a graduate level or an internship, and also learn those steps in terms of being exposed to that environment in public relations or corporate communications. So there are many ways in terms of where you can position yourself. Many people, once they've gained enough experience, they go out and they open up their own PR consultancy, and they specialize in specific areas. So, for example, Angela Barter, who we made mention in the textbook, which you've got to read that case study, opened up a PR consultancy that speaks to specifically guiding organizations from an environmental perspective and measuring and looking at their carbon footprint and how they're minimizing, in terms of putting together a strategy of how they can minimize their impact on any organization, not an organization, the environment. So whether it speaks to carbon emissions, recycling, especially in the ocean and the sea and the rivers. What happens there is the marine life. So with people littering so often on the beaches, you'll find people throw plastics. What happens is these plastics ultimately end up in the sea or the river. The marine life eat these plastics and they die. So that is what Angela does in terms of her consultancy. She's chosen to strictly focus on the environmental aspect. And what you can do is reach out to some of the agencies on the PRISA's website, the public relations agencies, and speak to them. Speak to the managing director. Tell them you're a student at Boston Media House and you want to have a one-on-one interview with them or Teams meeting for them to give you some insights into the world of public relations. So this can actually be something, a convincing argument why public relations is the discipline that or the career that you want to pursue. So yes, I'm very much biased. You can see public relations is a phenomenal career if you choose to go down that route. But also, I'd encourage you, like I've mentioned before, you are in public relations too. I want to encourage you to actually progress through and finish PR2 and then go into PR3 and see that through. When you reach PR3, it gets extremely interesting. Not that this is not interesting, but it moves to another level where you get to operate on a very strategic level. It teaches you that. So if that's any motivation to go by, please, by all means, look at going and joining PR3. So on the rest of the lesson plan, I have touched on the practice of public relations now. And in terms of PRISA, they also offer different programs to supplement your studies. I would suggest don't do them at the same time because it's a lot of work that's attached to actually doing the courses additional to this. Do it when you're done with the qualification, with your Boston Media House qualification. So I'm just going to read here. So you're going to read chapter 9 and familiarize yourself with some of the disadvantages and the advantages. I'm not going to cover that. And I've covered in terms of the different roles and functions that you can move into. So at the end of your lesson, your roadmap, so it's actually on page 2, not at the end, the roadmap, you're going to look at chapter 9, read that, read all the aspects that we've covered in. You're going to actually read chapter 8 on research, then you're going to go to chapter 9, and you're going to read the practice of public relations. On the bottom of page 2 of your roadmap, week 4 roadmap, please go and look at the campaign of the year that won in 2021 and in 2022. Please go and look at them. There's also some other video links that are included for your own reading. Not reading, for you can go and watch them. So that brings us to the end of the lesson, right? So what I'm going to do is there is homework for you to do, which I need by Monday. The first is you are going to do your presentation. I actually need to write this properly. Okay. The 4th Industrial Revolution, or let me rather do this. Okay. Next week, our sessions are going to be online on Teams, right? So the week after, we're going to do face-to-face. You are going to present this in class when we see each other face-to-face. So I'm giving you, all presentations must be sent to me by at least the Friday, next week Friday. I'm actually going to look at the date and give it to you. So the nice thing about this is we are being recorded, so there's no saying I didn't tell you. So on the 24th of March, you can send it to me during the day, in the evening. I want each and every one of you to put together a presentation on the different industrial revolutions, from the 1st Industrial Revolution right up to the 5th Industrial Revolution. When did it start, right? How it impacted businesses and the industry, and what was the Industrial Revolution about? I want you to go, secondly, that's the first aspect of your homework. Please do it on PowerPoint. I reiterate that. Secondly, in terms of BBBEE, I want you to go and do research and present to me as if I don't know what BBBEE is in South Africa, right? Thirdly, what you're going to do is you are going to conduct research. That's on the last page of your lesson plan, on the roadmap, sorry. Conduct research and identify 3 public relation consultancies in South Africa. Identify at least 3 clients of each consultancy and establish if they have received any PRISM awards in the last 5 years. That is going to be your third exercise. Guys, please take this seriously. You're going to do this on a PowerPoint presentation. You can choose the templates, the template format, or whatever the case is, and you are going to present this in a professional format. So homework number 1, I'm repeating again. The industrial revolutions from the 1st to the 5th Industrial Revolution. You're going to give me the era, so the dates when it started or which decade it started, what it entailed, so what was the Industrial Revolution about, and how it affected businesses. Not that difficult. If you are going to use sources from the net, make sure your work is referenced. Then secondly, BEE, BBBEE. You're going to explain to me BBBEE, when was this legislated in South Africa, what it's about. Basically, if I didn't know what BBBEE is about, you're going to take me through that. And then lastly, on page 3 of your roadmap for week 4. It says what to do towards the end, where you've got to conduct research and identify 3 PR consultancies in South Africa, identify at least 3 clients of each consultancy, and establish if they've received any PRISM awards in the next 5 years. Guys, there's 3 activities. Your deadline is Friday, the 24th of March, 2023, because next week will be online lectures, right? So by Friday, I want everyone's presentations in, and you are going to present this in class. Remember, try and go through your presentations over and over and over so that you are not reading your slides in class. This is part of prepping you to be a public relations practitioner, because one of the functions is you're going to be able to stand up and present to your manager, to a team, to board members, to external stakeholders, to be able to do that. So this brings us to the end of the lecture. We've gone slightly over. Guys, the roadmap for week 5 will be published on Core Campus. The material will be there. Make sure you go through week 4 and ensure that you understand all of this. And then please be prepared with the readings. Before every week, you need to have gone through the roadmap so for next week, you're going to go through the roadmap, right? For week 5, you're going to do the readings that are aligned to the chapters, because please understand, I may ask questions in class, and it may be making reference to something in the textbook. So please be prepared. And also just a reminder is that you need to sign the attendance register also for today. Please see Jackie or Grace and ensure you sign in, because those attendance registers are actually, they look at attendance of students as well. And then secondly, just a reminder for those that haven't got their valid student cards yet, from today, the gates are going to be, they'll be locked, and you won't be allowed access if you're not on campus. So please make sure you should be on campus today, because we were actually going to have face-to-face lectures. So attendance register to be signed. Guys, have a great rest of the week, and I will be in touch with you next week. Anything you are not understanding in terms of the lecture, please post on the WhatsApp group and I will respond. Thank you and have a great week.